there, welcome to Gaining Vision. I'm Melanie. Thanks so much for clicking. To my returning subscribers, thank you for your continuous love and support. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Please feel at home. Have you had an opportunity to hit that subscribe button yet? If not, take a second, go ahead, do it, it's free. And please don't forget to like and share the video. As I was doing my research to learn more about the continent of Africa, I came across a very powerful video. It was of a speech from the South African president when he was addressing the world leaders in France.
Let me start off by saying, President Lula, don't worry, when we have the BRICS meeting, the issue of currency is top on the agenda. So we are going to discuss it to address the key challenges that many countries in the world face, particularly the developing economy countries. And we also would be agreed that there needs to be more cooperation and coordination between your development banks, multilateral development banks, and the private sector. There needs to be coordination so that there is no fragmentation, which you kept talking about.
He talked about many important topics, starting from the importance of reform for financial architecture for the world stage. He was sharing that they're tired of being treated as unequal, feeling like they're beggars, and that things needed to change, that all African leaders were contributing just as all other world leaders were.
But I think what is important to many of us is that there should be solid consensus on the reform of the financial architecture of the world. Because without that reform, the dreams and the objectives that we have to address our challenges will not be realized. And those reforms need to touch on a whole range of issues. Mr. Mo Ibrahim yesterday even spoke about something that we may think is insignificant, that the boards of directors of your multilateral institutions are not made up of independent directors. They are largely internal people or shareholders. So that in itself, for us, it's an important reform. We also need to look at the distribution of the special drawing rights. I find it a bit difficult to be told that this is set in the rules and it will forever be like that, and that it's either you get 0 or you get 34 billion. In our view, this is not a zero-sum game. It's a game where we all need to be dealt with equity in an equitable manner. And there is a need for reform in that regard as well. And the other important thing for this to happen, it will help us not to participate as unequal cousins in these institutions. It will help us to participate fully, and so that we don't have a sense that we are beggars, that we are being dealt with out of generosity. I think it's important in the new era that the world is in now that there should be a good measure of equality among sovereign nations.
He shared the example of when seven leaders from Africa traveled to Ukraine and Russia to go on a peace mission to encourage peace for the Ukrainian and Russian war. They were there and they were having a conversation about reaching peace treaty. And he also asked that both Ukraine and Russia open the Black Sea Channel so that the grains and fertilizer would go out to the world markets so that everybody, all the world, would be able to trade on the market.
You know, recently, 7 African countries decided to go and put a call for peace to Ukraine and to Russia. And we raised a number of issues. Zambia was represented, Comoros was represented, Republic of Congo was represented, Senegal was represented, Uganda, as well as South Africa. So we were all represented. and Egypt as well. So we were all at one, that even as we were going to address an issue of the war which has had a negative impact on the African continent, which is the rise in prices for food, rise in prices for fertilizers, we were clear that we are not going there as beggars. We are not going to ask for a favor to both Ukraine and Russia. We were going there to say, open up the Black Sea Channel so that the grains and the fertilizers should go into the world market. So we were not on a begging mission, even as we are in great need as a continent and all that. That should go to demonstrate that Africa should never be seen as a continent that needs generosity. We want to be treated as equals. Even in the multilateral institutions, we want to be treated as equals. And if our equity is at a low ebb, there must be ways in which that can be addressed. To us, this is very important. Our sovereignty is one of the things that we hold on dearly to. And we demonstrated that very clearly to both President Zelensky and to President Putin when it came to this issue. Even as there were suggestions that, yes, we can donate this, we can donate that, we said, we want you to release these grains and fertilizers to the world market so that the world can trade in these commodities and other issues we can handle in a different way. I wanted to make that point so that it should be understood where Africa has evolved up to. We want to be key players on the world stage, want to be key players even in the financial markets and in the MDBs.
Despite Africa needing resources and being offered donations, they stood firm. They were not going to look as beggars. They were going to look as equals. They did what they needed to do for the world. He also shared when he was the leader of the African Union, during the pandemic, there was a lack of access to vaccinations, that the Northern Hemisphere had access quickly, and Africa didn't have the vaccinations when they needed them most.
I played a key role as chair of the African Union during the COVID period. We felt like we were beggars when it came to vaccine availability, when we felt we needed access to vaccines, and the Northern Hemisphere countries had bought all the vaccines in the world, and they were hogging them. And they didn't want to release them at the time when we needed them most. And we felt like we were begging. And at times it felt like they would just be droppings from the table, that yes, we will give you that and that. And let me tell you something that generated a lot of resentment.
And in fact, when they came to the table talking about wanting to create vaccinations in Africa, they were shut down quickly.
And it got worse when we said we want to manufacture our own vaccines. And when we went to the WTO, there was a lot of resistance, enormous resistance. And we kept saying, what is more important, life or profits by your big pharmaceutical companies? And that too, I must tell you now, generated and deepened that disappointment and resentment on our part, because we felt like life in the Northern Hemisphere is much more important than life in the Global South. And these are issues that need to be addressed. And I'm glad that we are all seated here like this, because we've got to get to the heart of these matters and address them.
He also highlighted the importance of promises unmet by other world leaders. When they go to conferences like the summit he was speaking at, they have promised money to come to African countries and never see it come their way. They're tired of feeling like they're begging or looking for generosity from the other countries, when really, truly, they need to be treated as equals.
I do, Mr. President Macron, want us to address another issue, which to us is a bit of a negative. You will have heard President Sisi talking about the 100 billion that was promised in Paris. President Sassou Nguesso yesterday as well also spoke about it at the dinner. Now, there is that issue that a number of the commitments that have been made have not really been fully lived up to. But before I get into details, let me immediately say that we recognize the many initiatives that have been put on the table, and a number of countries here have done so. Germany has gone out of the way to put a number of initiatives, and the US has also done a number of things. But there have been times when we felt like we were beggars. Now, I come to promises that have been made. And Chancellor Scholz was saying, we've got to walk the talk. Yes, we want to see the talk being walked. President Sassou Nguesso yesterday said at the dinner, $100 billion was promised per year. And he was saying, I've never seen that. And many of us will testify that that $100 billion has never really been made available. And this should stand out as something that needs to be addressed. Because sometimes we sit at conferences like this and say, yes, we'll make this available, and we believe you. We believe you, but now the tire must hit the tar. We must now see action flowing from that.
He also talked about one of the African leaders had presented an opportunity for a project that would work on infrastructure, something that would actually be tangible progress instead of just words. And that was to help 600 million Africans receive electricity with one project. That's 12 to 15 countries having access to electricity. Africa has the resources to do it, they just need the funds to do it, and they don't want to beg. The South African president asked the leaders in France to step forward and take on this initiative.
Now, I want to then talk about something very practical. President Sassou Nguesso raised it yesterday. He said he would be happy if flowing from this summit, we do something very practical on the infrastructure side. Having said that 600 million people in Africa do not have electricity, and yet we've got all the resources to generate electricity, particularly the mighty Congo River, and that there have been plans to build a number of power stations that will generate, in my calculation, up to 70,000 megawatts. And he said, and I want to speak in support of this proposal, that to prove that these summits are not summits where we just talk, flowing from the Paris COP as well as others, let us now put money on the table and collectively say we are going to address this mega project. A mega project which will in the end generate electricity for up to 12, 15 African countries all at one go. And this is a project that I think the multilateral development banks here working together, the call that you've made, President Macron, can actually fund. And where, as we rise from this, we should be able to say the Inga Dam is now going to be developed into the Inga Power Station, the one that President Sassou Nguesso mentioned, and the next one as well. If we can do that, then we as Africans will now be convinced that these summits are really meaningful. We will now go home and say, you know what, it's worthwhile going to these summits, coming to Europe, and to listen to all the promises because they are willing to act on the promises. This is what President Macron, I believe, will be one of the most important outcomes. The reform of the financial architecture, as well as a practical project, infrastructure project that is going to add a lot of value.
What I was really impressed by this speech, not only was how eloquently he spoke and how confident he was in his need and desire to help Africa, but also to see himself and other African leaders as equals. A lot of African leaders are tired of feeling like less than and feeling like they're begging continuously for what they need to prosper in their countries. I found it very interesting to learn that this was still happening in 2023. Amazing to me. I encourage you to listen to his speech and see how you feel about it. And it's clear that he's not the only African leader feeling this way. In fact, the president of Kenya addressed the same group asking for the exact same thing. They're tired of feeling like beggars. They need to be treated as equals.
Those resources controlled not by IMF and World Bank. Because IMF and World Bank, you have the final say. We don't have no say. We want another organization of equals, where you have as much say because you pay, as much as we do because we also pay. That's the organization we are looking for. And that is why we are saying we need a new financial architecture, where governance, where power is not on the hands of a few people. We can agree on the governance of the institution. We can agree on the sharing of power so that all of us have access to resources that go to making sure, number one, renewable energy. We invest in decarbonization. Number two, adaptation, mitigation, smart agriculture. Number three, restoring our planet, restoring our biodiversity, and making sure our carbon sinks work. This is what we are saying, and we would appreciate a little understanding. We want to be, we are talking the normal. If we continue talking the normal, Emmanuel, we will never solve this problem. Things are not going forward, they are going backwards. Tokenism, installment will not solve this problem. We have a much bigger problem than the installment we are discussing here will solve. You're not hearing us.
I will, if I may,
Yeah.
I will answer you.
Take a listen. Let me know what you think. Let's have a conversation about this. I think this is a vital step forward in order for the world to come together and be prosperous across the globe. Every person, every country needs to be included, needs to have equal access to monies, as well as feeling as if they're part of the solution. Take that extra minute. Ensure you've hit the notification button, and don't forget to like and share. Until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.